Let's just call it what it is. The Dallas Mavericks have become the NBA's biggest mess since they traded Luka Doncic. It's almost like they pressed the self-destruct button, threw the blueprint in the trash, and dared fans to keep watching while the franchise nosedived. Like, seriously, it's one thing to make a questionable trade, but this was franchise malpractice. You don't trade a generational 5-time All-NBA first-team player in his prime unless he's demanding out. And Luka wasn't. This wasn't some James Harden situation or a ticking contract clock. Luka was locked in and loyal. And instead of building around that, the front office went rogue. It's the kind of stuff that makes fans throw their remotes at the TV. And speaking of fans, yeah, they've turned completely on the franchise. Fire Nico isn't just trending, it's a lifestyle. People are chanting it at Mavs games, hockey games, and even medieval times, bro. It's the Dallas version of a revolution. And honestly, can you blame them? Every day, it feels like the front office wakes up and asks, how can we make this worse? They didn't just trade Luka, they lit the entire team identity on fire and walked away like it was a mic drop. And the fan base? They're left standing in the ashes asking, what the hell just happened? So let's say your team just made one of the most controversial trades in NBA history. Your fans are furious, the media is foaming at the mouth, and your credibility is basically on life support. What do? Well, if you're the Mavericks, apparently the answer is hide. Literally, they called a secret invite-only press conference with no cameras, no microphones, no transparency whatsoever. It's like they were trying to win an award for worst PR move of the decade. I mean, this wasn't a CIA operation. It was supposed to be an explanation to your devastated fan base. But nope, they didn't want any viral clips, no sound bites, nothing to hold them accountable. That's how ashamed they were of what they'd done. And honestly, fans saw right through it. Like, come on, man. If you were proud of the trade, you'd want to go on every podcast and explain it. You'd do media tours, post hype reels, make merch. But instead, they acted like they were testifying in court. And the message that sends, we know we messed up, but we'd rather ghost the entire city of Dallas than admit it. You think that helped the vibe around the team? Nah, it just added gasoline to the fire. Because when you go radio silent after breaking fans' hearts, they're not just mad, they feel disrespected. And once you lose the respect of your own city, there's no coming back easy. You'd think if the Mavs were gonna take this nuclear gamble and trade Luka, they'd have a master plan to at least win some games, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Since the trade, they've gone 13-20, hanging onto the play-in tournament by a thread, while the Lakers, who landed Luka, have gone 23-13 and climbed to third in the West. That's not just a bad return, that's a slap in the face. But it doesn't stop on the court. Oh no, Dallas decided to hit fans with a double whammy. First, they raised ticket prices. Like, imagine getting your heart ripped out when Luka got traded, and then opening your email the next day and seeing, congratulations, your season tickets just got more expensive. It's comedy, except it's not funny when it's real life. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the front office started leaking dirt on Luka, calling him lazy, pointing to his diet, talking about his love for beer and hookah. Like, really? That's your PR strategy? Trash the guy who made your team relevant? But here's the plot twist. Luka saw all that, came back, and dropped 45 on the Mavs. It wasn't just revenge, it was a public execution. And every time the Mavs tried to smear him, it just made them look smaller. Now you're losing games, getting booed at home, and beefing with your ex-superstar? This isn't just dysfunction, it's a full-on meltdown. Alright, so Nico Harrison and Rick Welts keep pushing this mantra like it's gospel. Defense wins championships. And hey, that's a nice soundbite. Real motivational poster energy. But the problem is, it doesn't make any sense in the context of what they did. Because guess what? The Mavericks already had elite defense before the Luka trade. After picking up PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, the Mavs were literally the #1 defense in the league. That's not theoretical, it's a fact. So this idea that they needed to overhaul the roster for defensive purposes, total nonsense. And then, in the finals, they held Boston under 107 points in every single game, and even held them to 84 in one. So no, defense wasn't the issue. You know what was? Consistent scoring, floor leadership, and someone who could make plays under pressure. You know, exactly what Luka was. Trading away your offensive anchor in the name of defense when your defense was already elite is like throwing away your umbrella because it's raining. It's not strategy, it's sabotage. And fans aren't buying it. Every time the front office says defense wins championships, it's like watching someone repeat the same excuse after crashing the car. You can say it all you want, but it doesn't make it true, especially when the stats scream otherwise. You want to know what's worse than trading Luka? Trading Luka for a discounted return. Like, seriously, you didn't even get full value? That's the part that drives fans insane. They only negotiated with the Lakers, one team, like they were desperate to get it done before anyone could talk them out of it. So what did Dallas get for one of the top 5 players in the world? A generational talent still entering his prime. Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and 1 first-round pick from 2029. That's it. The Lakers had 2 picks to offer, and Dallas only got 1. They didn't even ask for Austin Reeves. Didn't even try for Dalton Knecht. They just folded. Nico Harrison tried to justify it by saying AD fits their defense wins championships model, but that's like buying a Ferrari for its gas mileage. Davis is injury-prone and inconsistent. Max Christie is still figuring it out. And that 2029 pick? That's 5 seasons away. By the time it conveys, Luka could be an MVP with multiple rings in your conference. That's the nightmare. And fans know it. They're not dumb. They see through the two-way player spin. They see a front office that sold low, panicked, and got robbed blind while pretending they were playing chess. Spoiler alert, they weren't. All right, I still can't believe this is real. But Nico Harrison actually got up there and said with a straight face, "You guys saw a championship caliber team for 2.5 quarters. Brother, what? That's the quote? That's the defense? Like we're now evaluating trades based on a sample size smaller than a halftime show? You can't make this up. 2.5 quarters? Not even a full game? Not a playoff series? Not a stretch of regular season dominance? Just 30 minutes of decent basketball before Kyrie Irving tore his ACL. That's the kind of quote that sounds like satire. And this is where it gets even crazier. He's using that tiny window of time as evidence that the plan was working. It's like baking a cake, tasting the batter and saying, "Yep, this would have been a masterpiece." But no one's eating raw batter. We want results. Meanwhile, Luka took a team to the finals. He didn't give us 2.5 quarters of potential, he gave us 4 rounds of proof, real, tangible success. But instead of admitting this was a massive risk built on shaky ground, Nico's clinging to 1/2 of a February game like it's gospel. And that quote, man, it's become the poster child for how out of touch this front office is. Every time a fan hears 2.5 quarters, it just pours salt in the wound, because it's not just a bad take, it's insulting. It says, we'll spin anything into success, no matter how little it makes sense. And for a fan base still grieving the loss of their star, that's about the worst thing you could say. Okay, now we've got to talk about what might be the worst analogy in NBA front office history. Rick Welts, team president of the Mavericks, tried to calm fans by comparing the Luka trade to when the Warriors traded Monta Ellis to make room for Stephen Curry. Sounds poetic, right? Except here's the problem. Luka is the Steph Curry in this scenario. They didn't trade away Monta to unlock some hidden superstar. They traded away the actual franchise cornerstone, the guy fans believed in, the guy you should have believed in. And unless Max Christie turns into a top 10 all-time player, this comparison just makes you look ridiculous. Like, is that the plan? Hope Max Christie becomes Steph 2.0? Because if that's the expectation, good luck. But it gets worse. Because by using this comparison, Welts basically told fans, trust us, we know better than you. But fans aren't dumb. They've seen Luka do things most players dream of, dropping 40 in playoff games like it's nothing, carrying a flawed roster to the finals, making defenders look like practice cones, and now they're supposed to just forget all of that because of one analogy that doesn't even apply? No shot. Instead of calming the storm, Welts threw gasoline on it. The Curry comparison didn't ease the pain. It reminded fans how rare a player like Luka is, and that realization that they let him go without a fight, that hurts more than anything. Here's where it goes from bad to potentially catastrophic. The Mavs didn't just lose Luka, they mortgaged the future for a plan that's already falling apart. ESPN's Tim McMahon called it out perfectly during that awkward press conference. He straight up asked Nico, "How can you say this is a 3 to 4 year plan when you also gave up control of your first round picks from 2027 to 2030? Like, that's a checkmate question, because you can't have both. You can't say you're building long term and give up all your tools to build with. That's franchise suicide." And when Nico got asked that, he froze. He literally asked McMahon to repeat the question. Then once again, he defaulted to his favorite catchphrase, "Defense wins championships." At this point, it feels like he's programmed to say that every time he panics, like a basketball robot short-circuiting in real time. But let's get real. This team is locked into Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, two guys with more medical reports than playoff moments in recent years. If it doesn't work, and it's already not working, you've got no stars, no flexibility, and no picks. That's a recipe for a decade in the lottery. And without Luka, without assets, you're not just irrelevant, you're invisible. This isn't just a rough patch. This is how you ruin a franchise for 10 plus years. And the worst part? They did it to themselves. Now let's get to the man behind the curtain, Patrick Dumont. The guy Mark Cuban handed the keys to, the real estate billionaire who now owns the Mavericks. And let's just say, basketball isn't exactly his strong suit. People inside the organization have already admitted he doesn't know hoops, and to be fair, he admits it too. But here's the problem. Instead of surrounding himself with basketball experts who do know the game, he put all his faith in Nico Harrison, like blind trust. Apparently, when Nico first pitched the idea of trading Luka, Dumont laughed, thought it was a joke. But when Nico said he was serious, Dumont just shrugged and said, "All right, you're the basketball guy." Like, what? That's your approval process for the biggest trade in franchise history? A laugh and a shrug? Bro, this isn't buying a new sofa. It's altering the future of your team forever. And the results speak for themselves. Fans don't trust Dumont because he's already proven he's out of his depth. He refers to the NBA Finals as the championship games. He once said Shaq had a great work ethic, like he's pulling phrases off a motivational calendar. The dude might be a great businessman, but in the NBA, he's a rookie trying to run with the pros. And the longer he lets Nico steer this ship, the more it feels like the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. Fans aren't just mad at Nico anymore. They're starting to realize the real issue might be coming from the very top. Now look, let's be real. Mark Cuban had his fair share of screw-ups. Letting Steve Nash walk in 2004? Huge mistake. Blowing up the 2011 championship team right after they won it all? Head scratcher. Skipping on Giannis because he didn't want to spend in free agency? Brutal. And don't even get fans started on how he handled Jalen Brunson. But here's the thing. As flawed as Cuban was, he never would have let this Luka trade go through. Ever. Say what you want about him, but Cuban knew what he had in Luka. That was his guy. He was courtside for every breakout moment, every step-back three, every playoff miracle. Cuban may have made some bad basketball decisions over the years, but he had the sense to hang on to greatness when he saw it. And now, the Mavericks traded away a generational player in his prime for a washed-up timeline and a prayer. Luka could be winning MVPs and titles elsewhere while Dallas is stuck with injury-prone stars, no picks, and empty seats. The only possible way out is winning the lottery and landing someone like Cooper Flagg. And even that's a stretch. The odds are slim, and let's be honest, even if they do get lucky, it doesn't erase the fact that they willingly let Luka go. This trade is going to haunt the franchise for years, and Cuban, for all his faults, would have slammed the brakes before it ever got this far. And that's the scariest part. If he was still in charge, this whole nightmare probably never happens.